therefore they're in a situation where the sort of long-serving core of players are a little bit drained by, the struggles they've had over the last few years, but they're not able to kind of rejuvenate that group in the same way they did a few years ago. And I think that's a really difficult situation for David Wagner to manage. And while the likes of Ashley Barnes and Shane Duffy and Jack Stacey are decent additions, as good as you'll get in the free market, I'm not sure they're necessarily the types of signings you'll make to serve the purpose that I've spoken about. So I'm worried about Norwich. I don't expect you two to be.
Hello and welcome to the Blue Monday podcast discussing Ipswich Town, up or down since 2015. I'm Rich Woodard, and this is the Flagship show available every week during the season on YouTube and podcast audio. Joining me this evening to catch up on all the latest Ipswich Town news, good friend Seb Brown, and joining us later on to do our now annual 1-24 predictions, friend of the pod, Gab Sutton. Seb, how are you? Are you excited by 1-24? Or are you... I'm trying to remember last year. It was all right, wasn't it, last year?
Some of us were better than others. I think it's fair to say. I'm a lot better at 1-24 than I am at weekly predictions. Yeah, Gab made the... we must remind him of the Milton Keynes to win the league kind of thing that he came up with. So we'll see what he's got to say later on. No, I'm good. Thank you. Good to be back. Football is ramping up nicely. It's a bit like the first day back at school, isn't it? Where you kind of see mates you've not seen for a while and you chat about what you've done over the summer, but then sooner or later you get back down to the nitty gritty of it all. So roll on the new season.
Yeah, and some of us obviously deciding that this is the perfect time of the year to go on holiday, Seb.
Not my fault. I'm bound by school holidays, so I can't go away until the school holidays finish. That sounds weird. My partner works in a school, to clarify, just to clear everything up. So I can't go away. She finished on Friday, so I can't go away until this time of year. So yes, I'm jetting off to Florida tomorrow morning for a couple of weeks. So I will miss Sunderland, I'm afraid. I'm sure I'll find somewhere to watch it, but you'll have to fly the flag solo on the first pre-match show of the season. But I'll be back for Stoke the following week. Sack
Seb for being disloyal. Let's do a news catch up. We threatened it. Let's talk about it. You were in Preston as you talk about Florida, the Lancashire Riviera that is Preston on Wednesday night. Talk to us about a friendly win at Preston.
Yeah, it feels like a little while ago now. It was a most pleasant evening. It was lovely weather. It was acceptable company because Mullet unfortunately joined me. But yeah, no, it was a very impressive first half kind of run out. We saw what we've seen from these friendlies. McKenna uses them as an opportunity to get minutes into the whole squad. So there was a raft of changes. I think 7 changes at half time, which kind of affected the natural flow and quality of the game. But the first half was incredibly impressive, to be honest. We were carving Preston apart at will. Sometimes the patterns of play, the moves we've all come to see now for 18 months of seeing Kieran McKenna kind of do coaching and stuff. We know exactly what we're going to do. As soon as Walton's got the ball in his hands, he's going to roll it out to the centre backs, and then we're going to look to ping it wide to the full backs. And that's how the first goal came. It was a lovely crossfield ball from Luongo. Yeah, lovely goal, wasn't it? Jackson did really well. Jackson played well in that kind of the Wes Burns understudy role. I guess he's got that pace that you can't coach, doesn't he? And the layoff from Broadhead is just next level. I didn't appreciate it, to be fair, on the night. I know someone obviously laid it back for Chaplin to smash it home, but I didn't really get the full kind of the quality of it until I saw it again on the replays. And yeah, they just played really, really well. Second half, like I say, ducked down a little bit because, naturally with 7 subs and, fitness not being what it is for a league campaign, then naturally the quality is going to tell a little bit. Hurst scored a lovely goal. Note for Marcus. Yeah, Marcus Harness as well, continuing his impressive pre-season, a lovely little kind of through ball. Hurst is onto it. And I don't think Hurst played any minutes for Leicester, did he, in pre-season? So I think that was his first kind of pre-season minutes of his campaign. It was a lovely finish, kind of, lofting the ball over Di Cornell. Remember him, Di Cornell? I didn't even know he was there until he came on. So yeah, lovely finish over the top of the keeper. And then we make a few more changes. Cameron Humphreys gets a concussion, and a few kids come on, and we do have to hang on a little bit. Preston pull one back, and we are kind of indebted to Hladky towards the end for a couple of really, really good saves. But that first half was incredibly impressive, and we all walked away kind of saying, well, if that's what we can do to Preston, then I'll go home and revise my 1-24s and put us down as league champions.
Yeah, I agree. First half was great. Lots of excellent possession as well. I was watching on Preston's iFollow, and their commentary team seemed surprised how much of the ball that we were seeing. So, get used to that, guys. And definitely made the point that if we were playing them slightly nearer the start of the season, maybe that friendly wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
But yeah, lots to be impressed about, and great news. I get, Chaplin talked about this on Life's a Pitch, which we can recommend. Go and watch Life's a Pitch. Our friend Phil Ham and Mark Murphy and all those lot. As a forward, as an attacker, you want to get your goals early in pre-season. You don't want it hanging over your shoulders. Chaplin's off the mark. Hurst is off the mark, and he'll score again. We'll talk about the Saturday friendlies briefly in a second as well. So that's kind of a positive, as well as the pattern, Seb. It's our forward players getting up to speed on goal scoring too.
Absolutely. And players like Marcus Harness, who, there was discussion come the end of the season, is he going to be one that moves on and they try and recoup some money for? Because, the front three in theory is probably going to be Burns, Chaplin and Broadhead. I guess the question marks maybe over Burns. And with our squad being at the absolute max, Harness was one that was discussed as potentially one you look to recoup what you paid for when he goes back to League One. But he's been excellent in his preseason, and he was probably the bright spark. Him and Hurst were the bright sparks of the second half, because, as I say, it did naturally drop off, but credit to him, he's come back with a bit between his teeth, a bit like Ladapo, and looks like he's got a point to prove.
Yeah, he's got competition though, Seb. Thursday night, Town finally announced, or should we say Fabrizio Romano announced.
We are massive.
The season-long loan signing of Omari Hutchinson, 19-year-old from Chelsea, former Arsenal youth player. Chelsea, I think, before and after Arsenal.
Yeah, and spelled Charlton as well, wasn't there?
Yeah, senior debut in a 1-0 defeat to Man City in January. Few appearances in the Pizza Cup. Give us your thoughts, Seb. I think can play anywhere in the kind of attacking three positions, left, centre and right. Maybe, are you saying wing back as well, possibly?
He can do a job. Yeah, that's simply based on the fact I signed him on Football Manager a couple of years ago. So as soon as the name came out, I saw him. So he might have moved on since then, to be fair. But yeah, it ticks the boxes for versatility. We know McKenna likes that. We've seen Don Ball referred to quite a bit throughout pre-season as, a utility player who can cover a multitude of positions. I know we're allowed 9 subs on the bench, but it's still going to be useful to have those players there that can, change the course of games in a variety of different positions. He's what he is. He's a Premier League loanee, so you think he comes with quality. The caveat being this is his first kind of senior men's football exposure. Like you say, he made his debut against Man City for Chelsea in the Premier League. Chelsea were an absolute basket case last season, they weren't they? So we have to be a little bit careful with him. I assume he will start on the bench, kind of get drip fed in for cup games early on. But he looks very skillful. He's done this stuff with I don't know what the kids call it these days. It used to be called techers, didn't it? The guys that can kick freestylers, that's it. Yeah, the guys that can kick a football up in the air and do a multitude of tricks in a certain time period. So he's certainly got the full repartee of tricks and flicks, and he's the kind of player that will get you excited. But he comes with the caveat, like I've said, it's his first loan, so we'll see what he can do. But it's another one ticked off. That's 4 that are in so far, and probably another 2 or 3 to go, maybe. Yeah,
we'll talk about. I think we're trying to figure out pod schedule for the next couple of weeks. I think we'll maybe come back and look at the state of transfers next weekend, so keep a lookout for that. I will ask you though whether you think the arrival of Hutchinson increases the likelihood of anyone going out. You mentioned Harness. I think he's had a great pre-season like you. I'd be sad to see him go. We've seen Kamara leave, and I think those two maybe were vying for a position perhaps. So yeah. Your thoughts on that?
I guess the natural at-risk ones are probably going to be the likes of Jackson and Kyle Edwards, the ones who you probably question, can they do it at championship level? Wes Burns is pretty inexperienced at championship level as well. We've got some manoeuvrability now in the squad, haven't we, with the mutual consent of Joe Piggott, and Kamara's gone out on loan, and Idris has gone back to Leyton Orient. So we have a bit more flexibility. So I wouldn't envisage, unless another Tyrese John Jules style player comes in that can cover 2 out of the front three kind of positions. I don't envisage anybody going out on loan just yet, but I guess it would be Jackson and Kyle Edwards who are the most at risk. But McKenna does like both those players. We saw Edwards was always on the bench, as was Jackson. He was kind of heavily load the front options on the bench to make sure he had game changes in their positions. And with 9 subs now, on his day, Kyle Edwards is a potential game changer. If he can add that end product to his game, I really like him, and hopefully this is the season it starts to tick for him. And Jackson's got that pace that probably no one else in the squad, probably Burns is probably the closest has, so they are both useful weapons to keep around. So I'd be happy if we went into the opening day at Sunderland with these kind of the squad maxed out at the maximum 25 level, but we need additions at the back, I'd say.
And we've been linked with Raksaki through the whole summer. Do you think this puts an end to those rumours now?
I think the problem is we know we like to do our business early, don't we? And it looks like Raksaki's obviously gone on for ages because the first reports came out within 10 days or so of the season finishing. And Zaha tonight apparently is going to Galatasaray, I think. So I'd imagine Palace have been keeping hold of him in pre-season in case he moves on. If he does move on, is it at least he's got an injury as well at Palace? So potentially Raksaki suddenly might have to become involved in their opening games and therefore might not be available to the end of the window. And
bit of a jump.
Yeah, it is, but you need squad players, don't you? I'm not saying he's going to come in and start, but they'll need options on the bench, and you'd rather have somebody who's played 40 games at League One level last season than a complete kid from the academy. So yeah, it might rumble on. Would we still take him? Of course, he's a quality player. He offers something slightly different to Hutchinson and the rest of them. He's probably Burns' most relevant kind of competition. Would we take him? Yes, but I think that the centre half position is the critical one at the moment.
Fair enough. Hutchinson is involved straight away on Saturday. This doubleheader of pre-season games. Neither of us were there. We're not going to drill into these too much. 2 defeats to League One opposition. 2 defeats as well. And
was it 3 deflected goals?
Possibly, yeah. I mean, how much? I know the answer to this one. How much do you read into these?
Just like you can't get too excited by how we tore Preston apart at will in the first half, you can't get too down on these ones. I mean, one was at Cambridge, for God's sake. We never, ever win at Cambridge, so that's just par for the course given our recent history against them. No, I mean, we're so fastidious and we're so the planning that goes into our games must be, to a minute level. And there's no way you can do that to the same level if you've got to suddenly have half the coaching staff jump in a car and drive an hour between venues. So I don't really read too much into it, to be honest. We have players out of position. Broadhead's gone through the middle because Hurst wasn't fit to start. You've got players kind of coming back from injury and working on their full fitness. So I just see it, as McKenna said, it's an exercise to get minutes into the legs. I'd imagine we will now start to see the team that's likely to start against Sunderland will probably face Luton in midweek, and then the same with the German Cup, and we'll see it step up another level. So yeah, as Mick used to say, don't get too highs with the highs and don't get too lows with the lows.
No, exactly right. I just kind of think the doubleheader was unnecessary.
It's weird, isn't it? Personally. Yeah, why do it? Why not just play one game, and if you want to make a load of substitutions, then do it, or arrange one of those ITFC 11 games against somebody local, and if you want to play some of the the Elkin Baggett and the Alan Carr, no, not Alan Carr,
Brooks.
Ryan
Alan
Carr.
Carr.
Yeah, who's the right back? Sean Carr.
Ryan Carr,
that's the one. If you want to play him at right back, then yeah, you do an ITFC 11 against somebody local. Yeah, indeed. But yeah, it was strange, wasn't it? And you've only got an hour and a half to get between venues, and yeah, a weird one, but more minutes in the tank.
Yep. We won't read too much into it. Is the conclusion. Let's talk Championship 1-24, shall we? Welcome back to the pod, friend of the pod, Gab Sutton. It's Christmas morning for you. We're going to use, instead of using the back to school analogy, when this podcast goes out, literally your 1-24 picks for the Championship will have gone out. Are you excited, or are you worried that someone's bought you a really crap present, Gab? What's the feeling for you? A bit of apprehension?
I'm really excited for it. It's so difficult to call though, Rich, because you've there's so many different possibilities that you've kind of got to juggle in your head, and coming up with a 1-24 is always tricky. But I do love that challenge all the same, and hopefully I can. I obviously had my terrible MK Dons prediction last year. Hopefully I can.
No one's mentioned it here, Gab.
I had to get it in, Gab. You'll have to forgive me. I had to get it in.
When we hang out together in like 30 years time, you're still going to be mentioning that, I reckon. No, I hopefully I can get a few that are half decent this time. So yeah, looking forward to it. Yeah,
well, we're going to have a go at it here. I mean, this is the first start of Team Blue Monday getting back into the groove of the Championship. We've been out of it for 4 years. We've got Ben, obviously, who's an expert. He'll be doing his own 1-24 on his channel. But Seb and I are just trying to recalibrate at the level above. You're an expert EFL through, so we've got to get you involved, Gab. So what I might do is let's go through every team alphabetically, and then we'll see where we've got them. I think we'll try and keep it brief because we can't go through every team in forensic detail. But let's get hopefully you guys have got your notes in front of you. Let's start, shall we, with Gab's favourites. Well, your personal favourites through loyalty. Blues, Birmingham City. takeover, Gab, is probably the headline for Birmingham, isn't it?
Absolutely bursting with that, Rich. I think I'm sure you've been, as Ipswich fans, in a similar situation where, me and other Blues fans, we've been kind of having conversations about the club over the last few years, but they've all come back to the same thing, which is no real plan, no real playing identity, no communication, and really poor leadership from the top, and it's kind of filtered down. And so to have someone that's communicated a plan that seems like he comes across incredibly well in his first interview, someone who respects the fans, someone that's going to bring that transparency and a vision for the club going forward, that's incredibly exciting. I'm not expecting fireworks from Blues. There might be a world in which we, because of the vibes and the momentum and the excitement over this, we, go massively ahead of schedule and miraculously break into the playoffs. But truth be told, I'm not expecting that. If we could progress a few places from last season and maybe get into the top half, I'd be absolutely delighted.
Yeah, it's about progression, Seb, surely, isn't it? We know for a fact that takeovers, so you can't snap your fingers and suddenly you're top of the league, can you?
Yeah, I think that's exactly how you guys have called it. Is exactly correct. They've had a few seasons of, no offense, Gab, but kind of circling the drain a little bit. We did it, and then finally, you've managed to get away from it. I like John Eustace. I think he's a very good manager, and I think some of the signings are smart as well. I know you've got a bit of money because Chong went off to Luton, obviously, but Tyler Roberts, Dembele. I know you've lost Bellingham's brother, who might turn out to be as good as Jude Bellingham was, but I just think, like you say, you'll be grateful with a season of kind of stability, not being in and around the dogfight as much as the past few seasons, and a season for the ownership group to really kind of set out what they're going to do and come up with a proper strategy and a proper plan.
Next up, Blackburn. I will obviously go through our 1 to 24 at the end of just having analysed every team. Really difficult with them. Maybe a little bit of the opposite, Gab, with Birmingham. Off the field seems to be a bit chaotic. Maybe a surprise package last season under Yondal Thomason. A little bit of disruption off the field. Is it the case this summer?
Actually, I think that Blackburn are probably in a more stable position than they've been in previous years. I think that some of the noises around Blackburn have come through the mainstream media, like the Mirror did a piece that they've had to cut money due to advice on the Indian government. But I spoke to Dan Ainsworth, who I'm sure you know from Rovers Chat, and basically the indication is that's a regurgitated story from 12 months ago rather than too much to worry about. They've got some good people. Greg Brutton, as sporting director, has done a good job in his first 12 months. Likewise, Yondal Thomason. They've got a strong pressing identity. So I think they're going to be expecting to be in that playoff mix again. If Adam Wharton has a great season, by the way, because he's one to watch.
Yeah, well, and the big headline, Seb, is probably a departure, isn't it? Ben Brereton Diaz finally moving on.
Yeah, they'll need Neil Ennis to step up, won't they, and kind of score the goals as his replacement. Also lost Bradley Dack as well, so a bit of experience for the last few years has dropped out of that side. I don't think they'll do as well as they did last year, to be honest. I think they'll drop down the table a little bit, but I like John Dale Thomas and I like what they're kind of looking to do. So yeah, I just think that Ben Brereton Diaz is a huge miss for anybody, and not to get the money for him. If you get 10 million, 12 million from a Premier League side, you can go out and reinvest it to get nothing because he walked away because his contract expires will hurt them, I think.
Yeah, well, more about that situation in a couple of teams' time. Bristol City, Gab. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm struggling to get excited about Bristol City. I don't think they're going to be in any trouble, but similarly, not particularly exciting. Thoughts?
Yeah, I expect them to lose Alex Scott for 25 million. So I think the question is, how well do they reinvest some of that money? Obviously, I'd imagine a significant part of it's going to go into the club as a structure, if you like. I think a slight concern for me would be that they've got a core of sort of 4 or 5 players who are kind of in the 30s, who they relied on, to start quite often last season. So if there's a drop-off from those players, is that going to affect things? Similarly, they're hoping Tommy Conway, though, after a good breakthrough season last year, could really go up another level as the centre-forward and maybe have a similar season to the one Scott did last year. So that's the big hope for Bristol City, but I kind of share your feelings towards them.
So Naki Wells, Seb, a lot of pressure on him, only 11 goals.
Yeah, he's moving towards the twilight of his career, isn't he? I think Jason Knight's a very good signing. I think that's a decent bit of business. They've gone out and got him before the Scott money's come in. So I think that's smart. But yeah, I just, Nigel Pearson is a safe pair of hands, isn't he? But I can't see them pulling up any trees. I've got them kind of lowerish to lower third kind of part of the table. And I think that's where they'll be. We'll see what kind of reception Mr. Ashton gets when he goes back there on a Tuesday night.
Next up, Cardiff. last season 21st, Gab. Not a happy home life at Cardiff. Do you know anything about Errol Bulio, the new manager?
Yeah, I mean, I think he had a mixed spell in Turkey. I think his methods are quite pragmatic, I guess. So I'm not expecting Cardiff to pull up any trees in terms of the football. But I suppose that the big news for them is that Aaron Ramsey's come back.
Yeah.
This is one of the best players in the world in 2013, by the way. So he's not going to have that same box-to-box energy, but he might have remnants of quality which could play a part in keeping Cardiff up. I like the signing of Dimitrios Goutas as well. Some good reviews on him from Greece. So there's some positives. And I think they've got a decent core of players, but the big question for me is up top and whether they've got enough goals in that team.
Yes, similar story to Bristol City. Well, quite a lot of, maybe less so Bristol City, but a lot of teams at this level, Seb, I'm just wondering where the goals are going to come from. And you look last season, Cabba, isn't it?
They've bought in Carlin Grant, haven't they? He's come on loan from West Brom, so I guess they'll be looking to him to kind of, lead the line. And he didn't have a great season last season, so they're just an unknown, aren't they? Because of the manager, it's very hard to predict. Some might hit the ground running, and some might be an absolute disaster and be fired by the November international window. So it's very hard to tell. I've tipped them to go down. Spoiler alert, because they were down there last year. They've clearly got issues off the pitch, and appointing an unknown manager to me never seems wise in that kind of position. You'd want to we'll come to Huddersfield.
You'd want Paul Hurst, isn't it?
You'd want somebody who has experience of the league. Who, okay, it might not be pretty, it might not be amazing, but that you're probably going to get to about 50 points and therefore stay up. And I think it's a big risk appointing an unknown.
Similar themes to what we've been talking about with Coventry. Yeah, we've got the kind of opposite of the Brereton Diaz story with Gyökeres going to Sporting. Was it for 25 million euros or whatever it was? Ellis Sims come in, but Mark Robins has just been there seemingly forever now, and that consistency is driving them slowly up the Championship table as it's taken them through the pyramid. Obviously lost at the playoff final, but what's your feeling about Coventry? Is it all about Sims?
Yeah, I think whether Sims can replace Gyökeres, I think that's going to have a massive bearing on what Coventry are able to do. I'm a little bit concerned that Coventry have just kept outdoing themselves over the last 6 years. And there's part of me that wonders, are they going to keep being able to do that?
Okay.
Because I feel like there's a core of players there in the sort of late 20s, early 30s that have probably had histories away from Coventry and Robins that hadn't necessarily been particularly glamorous. And I'm just wondering if some of them are going to be able to repeat what they did last year, especially without Gyökeres and possibly Hamer. We don't know if he's going to stay or not. So yeah, a few concerns about Coventry. My gut feeling is they might have a little bit of a drop off.
Seb?
I think Hamer's crucial. I think if he were to go, then like Gab said, I would readjust my forecast for them and see them maybe drop sort of, to about 10th or 11th or so. The Gyökeres is such a huge miss. Ellis Sims is a relatively unknown. Okay, he did okay at Sunderland, but it's different systems, and there's a lot to be said for continuity. I really like Mark Robins and what he's been able to do, but sometimes the natural order does kind of take over a little bit, and maybe the cycle was the peak when losing in the playoff final, and they might have to readjust a little bit. But yeah, the Gyökeres loss is a big one.
Money to spend though, and Robins has talked about bringing in more players, so wait and see there. Someone who's not been able to bring in players, Gab, who did pretty much of a miracle last season for me, was Neil Warnock at Huddersfield. Yeah, it's not looking good for them though, is it?
I have a big part of the reason why I've got Huddersfield going down is because I'm not I think for a 74-year-old manager, it's one thing coming in for 15 games, lifting the team, using your motivational qualities to get the results you need to stay up. I think it's a whole nother ball game to do the kind of 24/7 job to oversee the complete rebuild that the club requires over the course of the next 12 months. I think that's a very different proposition. I don't particularly rate this Huddersfield squad that highly. I think, 3/4 of it, you've got question marks over in terms of too soon, possibly over the hill. Some of them just aren't quite up to the level. So they're going to be relying on that core of 6 or 7 players to stay fit. But yeah, I'm sceptical of Huddersfield. I think it's going to be another struggle for them.
Yeah, Seb, no surprises there really. And goals, again, the issue at the moment, it looks like Sorba Thomas, who went on loan to Blackburn and was the chief assist maker for both Huddersfield and Blackburn. Draw your conclusions from that. is pretty critical, but he still might leave. But I think Gab's right, isn't it? As much as we love the Neil Warnock story, it does kind of feel like, you've got a lot of young up and coming coaches in this league that, dare I say it, might out-tactic him now.
Potentially, yeah. He's kind of one of the older generation, like with Mick. We saw Mick going into Blackpool and couldn't do anything last season. And as Gab said, it's very different to ride in on a white night with no pressure and kind of, get the club over the line and the fans will accept the style of football and stuff. It's very different doing it from day one, isn't it? I think they will stay up by the skin of their teeth. But yeah, the club needs a complete rebuild everywhere. Dwayne Holmes has gone off to Preston, so they're selling players as well. And when I was doing my notes, they were the one side that I couldn't see had bought in any kind of transfer of note.
Maxwell, keeper.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
And Lee Nichols is going to be their number one, so they essentially signed a backup goalkeeper. So
yeah, so it's a big ask. I think they'll be okay, but only because of Warnock. If Warnock were to leave or something, then I'd make them probably my heavy favourites to go now.
Hull, difficult one, Gab. We talked about managers at the wrong end of maybe their careers. Liam Rossini having a really good spell at Hull, very highly thought of. What's your take on these? Because I've seen your predictions, and this might surprise a few people.
I think Hull are going to do really well this season, and I think they're going to surprise a lot of people, Rich. I think they've got some really solid foundations from the second half of last season. Since Liam Rossini took charge, they only lost 6 in 28 league games, and that was without often having a centre forward on the pitch because Oscar Estepinion got injured, so they had to play, I think, Ozan Tufan as a false sign type thing. So I think they drew a lot of games in that, and I think if they had the right quality up top, I think that they could turn a lot of those draws into wins, as the cliche goes. So some really solid foundations at Hull. Really like Rossini, so I think they're going to be the dark horses.
Oh, there we go. There's
clip it now.
Seb, do you feel so positive about Hull?
I don't. No, I don't.
I mean, not the place.
I've been to Hull. It's hard to be positive. Yeah, no, I like Liam Rossini. I really like him. I thought he was harshly dealt with by Derby last year when they kind of made him the interim manager. And, according to all the sources in the game, he's a very well thought of kind of young coach. Liam Delap's coming on loan from City, hasn't he? So provides a bit of a goal threat. I don't know how he got on. He went to Stoke last year, didn't he? He was the next big thing, wasn't he, coming through when he went to Stoke? I've got no idea how he got on, but he'll add some firepower at least. And yeah, whilst I wouldn't tip them as my dark horses, I think they'll be absolutely fine. And another season of kind of progression, and then maybe Rossini might have eyes from elsewhere because he's clearly a very kind of ambitious and well thought of coach. Is he maybe potentially at the wrong club given the ownership structure there?
Oh no, the owners are great at Hull. Like Ajan Ilikali has the last couple of years made a huge difference on the club. I think from an ownership perspective, they're in a lot stronger position. I think
maybe they were before. Fair enough.
That. Yeah.
Let's skip us. We'll finish with us. We'll get your views specifically on Ipswich, Gab. Let's talk about Leeds. Finally got a manager.
You said that in a very strange way.
It's Alan Partridge.
It's Alan Partridge. It's a Partridge quote.
Yeah, okay. If I'm not quite Partridge, it's the office, Gab. Farker goes in at Leeds. We know all about Daniel Farker. Quite a lot of players exiting on loan. A lot of kind of this trading with loans and short-term deals, which I don't know how I feel about that. Ethan Ampadu's come in. It might be the start of many big money signings for Leeds. Have they left it a little bit late though, Gab, to be a early pace setter? Maybe a slow burn for Leeds this season?
I completely agree with you. I think I think they are going to have individual quality. Lots of rave reviews of Luis Sinistera, who's one of their wingers, that I think could be one of the best players in this league. So he's definitely one to watch. But I'm concerned that they don't have a squad that's built for Daniel Farker. They kind of recruit a lot of high energy pressers for Jesse March, and then they've kind of gone to Daniel Farker, who likes his technicians. So I'm not sure that they're necessarily going to be built for his style of football, and I think it's a slightly imbalanced squad. They've got lots of depth and options out wide, but I think there's probably question marks in a lot of other areas. Having said that, I still think they'll make the playoffs because of Sinistera and how big a season I think he'll have, but I don't think they'll make the automatics.
Yeah, it's still got a really quality squad when you look at it. You know, Jack Harrison still there. Seb, your thoughts on Leeds?
Yeah. I'm struggling to see who's going to score the goals if Bamford's injured. You know, Bamford's last couple of years haven't been amazing fitness wise. We know he can do it at this level. He had that incredible season at Borough. Was it 10 years ago now? 9 years ago when Murphy had the 27 goal season. And if he's fit, then they haven't got an issue. But if he, has the same injury issues, who's going to score the goals? You know, they've left it late appointing Farker. Not ideal to do it a week or so before pre-season training kind of starts. The takeover's now gone through, so they've got some stability there. Like Gab says, they should have enough about them to be in and around the playoffs, but exactly like you guys just said, I think the delay in the manager coming in is probably costing the automatics.
I'm going to regret my Leeds pick. I've just taught myself out of it. More on that shortly. Another team with high expectations, relegated from the Premier League and whose name begins with L, is Enzo Maresca's Leicester. Gab, everyone's favourites for obvious reasons.
Yeah, I think they've got a really strong squad. I think they're going to get a lot of money for the players that they've sold this summer. Obviously, they've just sold Barnes to Newcastle United, and I think one or two others. I really like the look of Maresca and some of his ideas. Very highly rated coach coming in from Man City, and I really like the additions of Conor Cody. People have sort of said, should you be signing a 30-year-old centre back for 7.5 million? And I kind of understand that it is a risk, but at the same time, I think sometimes you've got to balance out the sort of high potential sort of assets, if you like, and sometimes just if a team needs a cool, experienced head, just bring one in. And Cody's got lots of Premier League experience. He's won the title at this level with Wolves, so I think he's going to slot in. I think Harry Winks is going to slot in, and I think Leicester could win the league quite comfortably in the end.
Yeah, I agree with you on that Conor Cody point. Johnny Evans could have been that leader, experienced player, but he's left to go back to United on a free, presumably to be a development player in there on the 21s, development kind of reference point. Seb, it's difficult to look past Leicester, isn't it?
I can't, simply because, I know they've lost the likes of Tielemans and Soyuncu and all those kind of guys. Maddison obviously has moved on, Barnes today, but you still look at the squad and it's still riddled with quality. Callum Doyle's coming from Man City, and if you look at the strikers as of tonight, which is the 23rd of July, they've still got Vardy, Iniacho and Patson Daka, and you look at those kind of names. Vardy will still be good for 10 goals a season. Iniacho a couple of years ago became incredible for 3 months of the season. So they've got the talent and the ability there. I guess the one question mark, maybe the manager's new, but he's come from Pep Guardiola's Man City assistant manager. So I really can barely see any weaknesses at all. Last season, the keeper was an issue with Kasper Schmeichel departing. They had Danny Ward and they signed a guy, didn't they? Someone else in the window. They didn't really do well, but they've gone and spent £5 million on a keeper in the last couple of days. So yeah, I cannot see beyond them for the title. And like Gab said, comfortably.
Gab, another high potential team for success is Middlesbrough. Are they going to reap the benefits of Michael Carrick having had the whole of pre-season and the experience of maybe missing out on the playoffs, obviously, as well? It feels like a lot of attention being given to Michael Carrick's Borough.
I think Middlesbrough are the most exciting team in the Championship this season, because I look through their squad and I just see such a long list of players that just could be amazing this season. It's almost like that SpongeBob SquarePants meme where he has that list that sort of goes over the back of his head and through everything. Really exciting from that point of view. I do obviously Chuba Akpom scored 28 goals last season. Can he do that again? I would suspect there might be a bit of a drop off from Akpom, in which case I feel like they're going to need a bit more firepower up top than they've got at the moment. And I've also got one or two question marks about them in terms of the goalkeepers they've signed. But I think I'm also really excited. Ryan Giles is linked with returning. I think they've got lots of really talented players that could really catch fire. So Borough are going to be a super exciting team to watch. Could be box office, but I'm not sure they're quite going to get the consistency required for top two. I think they might just miss out. Interesting,
Gab. The 28 goals for Akpom. You mentioned Daryl Murphy, Seb. Is Akpom a one-season wonder, or do you think he can back it up?
Not a one-season wonder, but I'd be surprised if he got those kind of levels again. And he'll have a bit more support around him. I think Morgan Rogers is a really smart purchase. He's done well recently down at this level, and yeah, I think Carrick did an amazing job. When did he come in? Was it November, Christmas time, was
October,
it?
yeah, that
October,
kind of
okay, yeah. And they were in the doldrums, weren't they? Wilder couldn't get them going at all, and like we saw with McKenna, he absolutely revolutionised things. They flew up the table, and I think a bit like us this time last year with a pre-season, I'd be really excited to see what he can do.
Yeah, totally agree. And another team with good continuity, Gab, are Gary Rowett's Millwall. Made a claim for the playoffs, just missed out, but really stable situation there. I like Gary Rowett, quite underrated for quite a while in his career, doing really good stuff at Millwall, though, isn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. They've conceded barely over 1 goal a game throughout Gary Rowett's tenure when they've been playing in the league. And considering he's been in charge for 4 years now, that shows that there's a real defensive consistency about Millwall. And I'm pretty confident in saying they're only going to concede 50-odd goals this season. I think we've come to expect that from Millwall. The real question is going forward. Tom Bradshaw scored 17 goals last season, but a lot of them were kind of in bunches where he scored a couple of hat-tricks and a couple of braces, and I'm just wondering, if I'm being picky, can he kind of spread the goals across a wider volume of games maybe? And then Zian Fleming, Millwall are either going to get 13 million, which they're asking for Zian Fleming, or they're going to, they're going to keep him for this season, and he'll hope to reproduce what he did after signing. So those are the two go-to ones for Millwall going forward, and then Billy Mitchell in midfield is definitely one to watch. So yeah, I think Millwall should be well stocked to challenge for the playoffs again.
Seb?
Yeah, similar. That's where I've got them in my kind of prediction. I don't think they'll make the playoffs. I've got them just kind of dropping away a little bit. They've brought in Kevin Nisbet from Scotland, haven't they, to try and kind of ease the goal scoring burden on Bradshaw. And again, a bit like Coventry, I do like the kind of the continuity ones. Rowett got a bit of a raw deal, didn't he, when he was at Birmingham and stuff, and he's done a really good job at Millwall. And I think they'll have another solid season, if not maybe quite as spectacular.
Yep. Got to deal with them lot.
I loved by the way, your deep dive with the Norwich Gab was fantastic. It was brilliant. You'll never have to buy a pint in Ipswich ever again after that. The line, it was brilliant. Well done.
Hello to our friends at Talk Norwich City. Yeah, very much enjoyed that, Gab. And it's difficult to know with Norwich. I mean, again, it's a parachute team, a good caliber of player generally. There's just a lot of off-field dysfunction. There's question marks for me over Wagner's fit as well. What's your take on Norwich?
So I think that when Norwich won the title at this level 2 or 3 seasons ago, they were able to kind of ease the hangover of finishing bottom the previous season, because they could rejuvenate squad by bringing in lots of fresh energy and lots of high potential players, and just brought a different energy to the place. And I think that because they spent a lot of money, I think it was close, not far off, or is it 50 million? Or they certainly spent a lot of money in for their last Premier League campaign. It's meant that they've not really had the same spending power since coming down, and therefore they're in a situation where the sort of long-serving core of players are a little bit drained by, the struggles they've had over the last few years, but they're not able to kind of rejuvenate that group in the same way they did a few years ago. And I think that's a really difficult situation for David Wagner to manage. And while the likes of Ashley Barnes and Shane Duffy and Jack Stacey are decent additions, as good as you'll get in the free market, I'm not sure they're necessarily the types of signings you'll make to serve the purpose that I've spoken about. So I'm worried about Norwich. I don't expect you two to be, but they finished 13th last season, and I don't see them bettering that.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, it's the goals, isn't it? Again, so Pukki's obviously left.
Yeah.
Sargent
Barnes is solid, isn't he? Barnes is solid. He might get a few. Sargent's been around now, but yeah, I touch wood. Maybe we're finally going to see a bit of a swap over the last decade or whatever it's been. Yeah, I mean, I think the trouble is with Norwich is if they do have a bad start, then straight away the atmosphere in Carrow Road is going to be pretty bad, isn't it? They've got reservations about Wagner. They've got real reservations about Webb. Obviously, he's on his notice period now, and has Delia simply taken them as far as? I know they've got investment from the American guy, but is it now time for a kind of a changing of the guard at all levels of the club? We're going to enjoy it if it's the way we think it's going to go. Like Gab, I've got them in mid-table, and I think we will beat them this year for the first time in 2009, wasn't the last time we did them. But yeah, they've lost quality. Dowell going up to Rangers was on a free as well, so they've lost kind of decent players and not had any money in for them. And yeah, hopefully it will go the way we want it to go, and there'll be a bit of toxicity around Carrow Road come October, hopefully.
Yeah, and then what will happen, Seb, is they'll
win the league.
Really
They'll
well
win the league. Ashley Barnes will score 25 goals. They'll win the league somehow, and they'll go and get 100 million quid parachute payments again.
I'm gonna chuck a swear word in. They are absolute shithouses, Gab, for getting into a point where they look like they're going to totally unravel, and then suddenly they'll recruit someone, or they'll sell Madison and get a load of money in.
Max Aarons will go on right towards the end of the window for like 30 million quid somewhere, and they'll go and get someone people have never heard of who'll score them a load of goals. Yeah,
they magic stuff out from nowhere, Gab. That's the trouble with Norwich. But hopefully,
they need to lose 7-1 to Colchester again, don't they?
Oh, no, because then they won the league, didn't they?
That fixed them. Really annoyingly, that fixed all their problems. As great as it was on the day,
from their point of view, that's what they need, because it's like just what Rich said, really.
Yeah, I think that if they get a little bit of a kick up the arse from, I think Wagner will be one of the first managers to lose his job. But I think it will happen.
Record's crap, isn't it? He invoked no change whatsoever. Yeah. So,
I mean,
but who makes that appointment? Because Webber's going, he's on notice. The structure kind of needs a complete revamp, doesn't it?
Neil Adams, who knows? Anyway, there's Norwich. Plenty of excitement there, potential excitement, not in a good way for Norwich fans, hopefully. Here's another team with excitement off the back of a championship. Did we mention that Plymouth won the title? Plymouth won the title. Well done to Plymouth. Yeah, and deserved it as well. It's a different kettle of fish, obviously, being at championship level and a level they've not been at for a while. But Gab, if you're going to go about it, signing your two best players who happen to be loan players is a pretty strong statement, isn't it?
Yeah, Morgan Whittaker and Ballymumba, fantastic. Were fantastic in the title win last season, and I think they're more than ready to step up to the championship. Prodigiously talented players, and if I'm not mistaken, they've both signed up. Mumba's certainly signed permanently, and I think Whittaker
both 7-figure sums, Gab.
Yeah, I mean, that's incredibly exciting to say where they were 11 years ago when the uncertainty over the future of the club, they lost to sort of lower non-league opposition, and it was a very bleak time. And I think just over the last 10, 11 years, they've kind of built themselves up again, which is incredibly impressive. And they've got such a strong structure now. Chairman Simon Hallett even takes a lot of credit for it, and he's made some great off-field appointments as well, which have been crucial to what they've been able to do. And then Stephen Schumacher's done a cracking job. So yeah, things looking up for Argyle. Obviously, I think 50 points is, the first port of call for them. But I think they could achieve that quite comfortably.
Yeah, Schumacher feels like Norwich's next boss to me, Seb. This is a team, unlike a lot of the league that we know pretty well. Yeah. I think my problem with Plymouth still is how the goals come. There's a lot of reliance
sustainability would be the word
low XG chances, isn't there? Players like Whittaker and Mumba contributing. I know that Plymouth fans will criticise us for that. There's a few star players in terms of Plymouth in there, but has the squad got that quality? And I think that's probably the pattern of play at championship level is my question mark for them.
Yeah, I mean, I've actually changed mine this morning when you requested the list. I did actually change it last minute because I did have them in to kind of going down, but the Ballymumba signing kind of tipped them over the edge for me. And I think they will stay up. But my concern was we spent 30 weeks last year sitting on our podcast saying the numbers weren't sustainable. And fair enough, they became sustainable and they got across the line. And I think you said it, the more you do it, the more it's no longer considered to be fluke. It just becomes the norm. But eventually I think that will catch up with you a little bit if they're going to rely on,
right?
Yeah, if you're going to rely on Whittaker and Mumba to bang in 30-yard deflected worldies, I can't see that being as fortuitous as it was last year. So I think they'll stay up. I don't think they'll go down, but I think they'll be in and around the relegation zone a little bit. And yeah, I think Ennis is a bit of a miss. Ryan Hardy, is he capable of stepping up and scoring the goals? Not entirely sure.
Yep. Next up, another team similar to Bristol City, Gab, that just don't really excite me. I like Ryan Lowe. We've obviously beat them in pre-season last week, so we know a little bit about them. But Will Keane's a solid signing, but it's a bit meh at Preston for me.
I agree, and I think that they've been able to somehow get competitive results since coming up into the Championship in 2015 because of the good management of Simon Grayson, of Alex Neil, and now Ryan Lowe. But I feel like that work has never been kind of supplemented by a proper structure, the one we've talked about with Plymouth Argyle. And that means that they've not really been able to make the most of what they've been able to do and kind of build something that's a little bit more sustainable and has a bit more substance to it. And that's kind of a concerning thing for me. They've not invested in a development squad, which almost every other club has at this level, or proper facilities. And there's things like that they've not done. And that's what I think is going to catch up with them a little bit, and that's why I think they could have a big drop off for this season. They've still got a decent core of players. They finished in the top half last season, so they might be able to beat the drop this time around. But I think it's a club that's got to learn a lot of lessons, and so far I'm not sure they are learning those lessons.
Wow, interesting. Seb, I haven't got Preston being, well, maybe I have. Yeah, close, but I think there's just about enough quality there, isn't there, to make sure they're not too far down there?
It's hard to tell because we saw them in midweek, but that wasn't where they'll be, I don't think, at the start of the season. Gab, you'll know better than I can. Is Ryan Lowe a bit of a man under pressure? He seems to be a bit of he's not exactly endeared himself to the fans. Am I right in saying that?
Well, I like Ryan Lowe. I think in his first season there, he delivered top 10 form after taking over mid-season, and then delivered a top half finish last season, and on a bottom six budget with a club that doesn't really have the infrastructure or the recruitment strategy. I think that's really good form. So I don't think you can argue with what Ryan Lowe's done. It's just I don't feel like he's getting the support that he needs.
The backing. Okay. Yeah. I've got them kind of mid-table or so. There was a whole cluster, I'll be honest, of sides, and I probably could have rearranged them. There's about 7 clubs that I could have just simply jiggled around in the same 7 positions because I wasn't really sure where it was going to go, and Preston certainly fit under that umbrella. Yeah,
agreed. One team who has a feeling of maybe being the team which is circling that the floater that won't flush.
Lovely.
Yeah. I've used it twice now. QPR, Gab, Gareth Ainsworth did a really cracking job at Wycombe, but it was a team punching above their weight, a very specific style of play. And I'm just not sure it lends itself to Championship and QPR. Your thoughts?
I disagree with you on that. Ooh. I think more QPR fans are going to agree with you and probably have concerns over Gareth Ainsworth, but I happen to think that he's the right person for where QPR are right now because he's such a positive psychologist. That's one, studying his teams over the last 5-6 years or so, that's always been the one thing that's that stood out to me about Gareth Ainsworth because of the way he speaks. He gets you believing. Now, of course, there's going to be more to that. There's going to be more to it than that. And I think that he's, you don't get Wycombe into the Championship without having some sort of tactical acumen. So, but I think that ability to get people believing again and getting people buying in, I think there's going to be players that turn up to training at QPR, first day of pre-season training, that are really pessimistic and have very little hope, and then come the first game of the season feel like they can get into the playoffs because of the culture that he can create. So that's why I think Gareth Ainsworth can carry QPR through. I think it's going to be a difficult season, but I think if the club puts their faith in Ainsworth, I think he can get them through it.
So what's your take?
I side with you personally. I've got them in my bottom 3 because Ainsworth's record was just so bad. I understand he's got a pre-season, he can try and work on things, but they've not gone out and signed Ainsworth-style players. Begovic has come in because they sold Dieng to Borough in goal, but is he capable of changing his philosophies to fit that squad? They've got some talent. I like Chair. I think Chair's a good player, but are they? Is Ainsworth able to kind of change his methods and his ways to fit that squad? Because they kind of proved for about a third of the season, wasn't it? 15 games or so, I think he had there, that he couldn't get them to do it the way he wanted to do it. His record was appalling. So I've got them to go down personally.
Yeah, I think if you're going to commit to Ainsworth, I think you kind of need to give him a budget to sign players that would fit his system. Yeah. I know that there's room for flair players because obviously he had them at Wycombe as well. I just kind of feel like no one has really had time at QPR over the last few years to stamp their mark on it. And it was something similar at Ipswich where we had Mick McCarthy and then Paul Hurst tinkering with their squads. And by the time Lambert came in and then Cook, he was no one's squad, and it was just very dysfunctional.
On the other hand, I know we're not here to do a forensic deep dive, but I do want to kind of pick you up on that point, Rich, which is I think Paul Lambert is a very controversial character that's very my way or the highway. I think with Gareth Ainsworth, I think that if you speak to someone like Gareth Ainsworth every day, I think he'll get you kind of believing in him in a way that other managers don't necessarily have that.
It wasn't.
Do you think the players have got the ability to do it and play the way he wants to play?
I think my point, Gab, was that it's not Gareth Ainsworth's squad. It doesn't appear to me to be Gareth Ainsworth's squad yet. And I think I totally, he's a really eloquent, astute tactician. I've heard him talk about, he's done punditry for our games for Sky. He's obviously figured out a really successful strategy for Wycombe at League One level as well. So I've not got any issue really about Gareth Ainsworth's pedigree. My problem is that he's been put in a situation at QPR where, Les Ferdinand's now left, but all these short-term appointment managers, the recruitment goes with those managers as well. And I just don't think there's an identity for QPR.
And I agree that that's a massive problem, but I think that that's almost where Gareth Ainsworth's going to come into his own, because when he was at Wycombe, he was able to run the club and not just the team, which lots of managers in the modern era have. So seeing as QPR are in that position that you've described, which is a state of flux, I think it's actually a benefit to have someone like Gareth Ainsworth that can keep an eye on the club and not just the team.
As long as you back him, I think. And I think that's my question mark over QPR. Another team who I think all of us think might struggle, who had a really, in comparison, relatively speaking, a really successful campaign in the end, Gab, Rotherham. What's your thoughts there?
Well, I've got to give a shout out to Will Daniels, and I'm going to blame him a little bit, who's a Rotherham United fan. I'm going to blame him a little bit for my prediction on the Millers, because when I first started talking to him, I was planning to put Rotherham sort of close to lower mid-table, sort of between that and the bottom six kind of area. And speaking to him just destroyed any confidence in Rotherham United. Now I've got them 24th, so I'm blaming him for that. But I think they did rely a lot on Victor Johansson, the goalkeeper, last season, and centre back Cameron Humphreys. I think they've got a core of 5 or 6 players that are good enough for what they want to try and do. But I think that there's massive concerns over squad depth and whether Johansson's going to have the ssame season that he had last year. So those will be the question marks, I think, over Rotherham. And as always, they're going to struggle at this level, aren't they?
Yeah, it's goals, isn't it? Ogbene's gone. Barlaser went in January as well, didn't he, Seb? It's goals for Rotherham, isn't it?
Yeah, they've had some experience, haven't they? Cafu's coming from Forest, but he barely played last year, part of the kind of Forest squad registration nightmare. They've had a Grant Hall as well from Middlesbrough, so they've added some experience. But I thought Taylor did well. Paul Ward kind of took everybody with him when he moved across to Derby. All the backroom staff went with him, so it was kind of a stabilising job last year. But like you and Gab say, I think they'll struggle because who's going to score the goals? And I haven't got them quite 24th, but I've got them to go down.
Another promoted team, Gab, Sheffield Wednesday. I'm worried about Sheffield Wednesday at the moment. Are you too?
I'm very worried about Sheffield Wednesday, Rich. I was at Wembley when Josh Windas's 123rd minute winner sparked this euphoria in the crowd, and it was just an amazing moment for Sheffield Wednesday fans. And when Darren Moore lifted the trophy to a biggest cheer of the night, that felt like that could have been the start of at least the stabilisation process for Sheffield Wednesday, where they just find their feet a little bit in the Championship and make some gradual progress. I think that what's happened since then has kind of robbed them of that opportunity. I think that a lot of the sort of buzz around the club has been compromised because of what's happened, and I'm not really convinced by Xisco Munoz. And I think what they needed was 8 or 10 additions to this squad, and I don't think they're going to get that. So very concerned about Sheffield Wednesday, and I've got them going down.
Yeah, we've promoted, Seb, the idea that stability is important. Yeah. Darren Moore, whilst maybe question marks over them maybe falling across the finish line, they nevertheless got across the finish line where they needs to be. We know that he took them, was Sheffield Wednesday manager in the Championship, wasn't he, as well?
Yeah, for 6 months or so, wasn't he?
I think there's enough of a case for stability to keep him. But new manager, one signing, as far as I can tell, Reece James.
They made him permanent, didn't they? He was on loan, so it's a loan from last year that's been made permanent. The squad is aging, as we discussed
Michael
several
Smith,
times.
leading scorer, wasn't he? And is Bannon going to have the same effect? Is a big question mark as well.
Yeah, exactly. There are question marks throughout the squad, the lack of investment there, and obviously with Chanziri in charge, you never know what's going to happen, do you? I mean, he went on that rant at the press conference when they're unveiling Munez's record. He did all right at Watford, didn't he? If I'm correct, did he take them up? But he's been awful since, hasn't he?
That's the strange thing, Seb, because he did actually take Watford up, but I wasn't necessarily convinced by that. I think he relied a lot on individual quality, and I don't think he's going to have that advantage at Sheffield Wednesday, so I'm a bit sceptical of Munoz.
Yeah, I mean, I've got them surviving just, but I think if Moore was still in charge, I'd probably have them closer to kind of 14th, 15th in the league because of that stability and the fact the squad was pretty much recruited, for him. It was they went out and got the players he wanted them to get, a short-term fix, as opposed to us and Plymouth taking the longer-term kind of strategy with our transfers. And I think they'll struggle. I think they'll survive just given, on its day, Hillsborough can be a cauldron, and all the raucousness we saw in the second leg of that playoff semi-final against Peterborough might get them across the line, but they need players in badly, I think.
Yeah. I think they're relying on three other teams being crapper than they are at the moment. Big signings needed there. Other end of the potential league table at this point, Gab, another relegated team, Southampton. The biggest question mark for me is Russell Martin, isn't it? Is it the same for you?
Yeah, I think Russell Martin is a question mark. He's I think he's a good coach. I think his 2021 MK Dons side and 22 last season Swansea side, well coached, good teams between both boxes. But I think the fact that he's not achieved anything of substance yet in his career means inherently there's a question mark, because he's kind of got the jobs he has on style alone rather than a proper shiny thing on your CV. So I think that is a bit of a question. I think that the other one for me about Southampton is that the squad they have at the moment could be very different to the one that they'll have at come the end of the window. And I don't think that's ideal necessarily for preparation. There's news that Alcaraz, who's their attacking midfielder, is going to stay on for the Championship, and he's very highly rated by Saints fans that I've spoken to, so he could be one to watch. But I'm concerned about Southampton, and I think that they could underwhelm a bit this year. So I've got them outside the playoffs.
Ward-Prowse, big name there, Seb, still there at the moment?
At the moment, as we record, him, Livramento and Lavia, I would say, are the three that surely they won't be there come August 31st, where the deadline is. So it could be a very different looking squad. They've gone to sign Shea Charles for £8 million from Man City. Considering this policy of last summer where they would sign, Man City academy players, they've taken a few Man City backroom staff, haven't they? I think Wilcox was involved there at Man City, and he's now their director of football, whatever he is. So there's clearly a strategy there to develop these young technical players. Didn't work for them last year. I guess the reason I've got them in the playoffs, the reason I'm not tipping them for the top two is a year ago, it was an incredibly high pressing team under Hassan Hootel. He goes and they get Nathan Jones in, who, we know has a very short tenure. Then Sellers comes in. So you've kind of got this mismatch of kind of different managers, kind of approaches and tactics, and potentially that might kind of get found out. I think they'll be in the playoffs, but I've not got them for the top two.
Well, I think they've got Ryan Manning in from Swansea, Will Smallbone, who's at Stoke on loan, who's Stoke's leading assist maker. He was on loan there. He's come back, I think. So there are some assists in that team at the very least, which brings me nearly on to Stoke as well. Another of these teams I feel meh about, though. Alex Neil's Gab, building a pretty strong, he's starting to stamp his authority on the squad, isn't he?
The thing for Stoke is that they had 7 players contracted at the start of pre-season training, so that would have been quite a difficult one, I think, in terms of. And by the way, they've got a new head of recruitment, a new sporting director, and basically new whatever role you have at the club, they've got someone new in there. So I think that lends itself to a season of transition for Stoke City. They've got a great academy, which I think is going to be helpful, while maybe they're not going to have the biggest of squads going into the season. They've got Emery Tesgel, who's a 17-year-old who's incredibly highly rated, and Nathan Lowe as well. So those two could be ones to watch. And we might see a couple more coming through from their academy. But I think if they got to a comfortable 50 points and started to develop a clear style of play, I think that would class as a good season for Stoke City.
Yeah, Alex Neil getting the old band back together. Seb, Daniel Johnson, Ben Pearson. Recruited.
Yeah, I guess like Gab, I've get to 50 points and then look to put together a bit of a plan and a bit of strategy moving forward. I guess I'll see Alex Neil left Sunderland, didn't he? Right was it after the season had started last year, or was it in the summer? I can't remember.
No, it was after the season started. Yeah.
So clearly he had high aspirations. We know it worked out with Sunderland last year, obviously finishing in the playoffs under Mowbray. So he had high aspirations going in there. Last year didn't really, get off the ground. And I guess, as Gab said, if you've got a minimal squad on day one of pre-season, then you probably are looking at a year of just get over the line and then look to kind of formulate things a little bit better moving forward.
Sunderland, Gab. Tony Mowbray doing a great job there. A little bit of recruitment as well. Good season last time out. What's your take on Sunderland?
Top 2.
Oh, there you go.
Exactly. I'm going to give you the headline straight away. They got to the playoffs last season when so much went against them that meant they shouldn't have got to the playoffs because, firstly, they're a newly promoted club. Secondly, Alex Neil, as we've just mentioned, left a few months into the season for Stoke. Thirdly, top scorer Ross Stewart got injured and Ellis Sims got recalled by Everton. And fourthly, they had a string of injuries in the second half of the season in defence. So they ended up with a right back at centre back. Luke O'Neill had to play pretty much everywhere, a winger at left back, all these sorts of things, and still they managed to scrape a playoff place. And that for me shows that as well as having these prodigious talents like Jack Clark and Patrick Roberts, and obviously Amadou Diallo was on loan, there's the right culture, there's the right attitude in this Sunderland group. And that means that I'm not necessarily that concerned that they don't have those leaders, if you like, in the shape of experienced heads, which there's some concerns over that because it is quite a young squad, but the fact that they did get to the playoffs last season when so much went against them suggests there's real character in there as well. So I think Sunderland are going to go very strong. I really like the recruitment they've done so far. I trust the club structurally, which is crucial. That's why I'm putting them in my top 2.
Sunderland, there's a lot of similarities with us, isn't there? So we're kind of Sunderland a year delay, aren't we? So
we're a Netflix documentary series apart. Everything in the Sunderland Till I Die documentary would have been Ipswich Town if they'd have come and filmed around our offices at that time. I'm really happy for them because they were ridiculed in that documentary, and I see Sunderland as a proper club. I always enjoy going there, and I'm delighted that they're kind of on their way back up. Obviously, Mowbray has an Ipswich Town legend kind of link, which naturally makes me favour them a little bit more as well. But I really like the young side, the football they play. I thought they were unlucky in the playoffs. Like Gab said, they went to the second leg and you could see the physical size difference in the back four because they had 3 out of 4 players completely out of position due to injuries. So I know they were very reliant on Diallo last year on loan from Man United, but I haven't quite got them for the top 2, but I've got them in the playoffs as well. I think they'll do well again this season, and I'm pleased for them. I think they deserve it.
Yep. Swansea, Gab, a team again going through a transition. We like Mike Duff. Is it a good fit? ?
Well, I'm going to give you another bold prediction, which is Swansea for the playoffs. And that is because I do think it's a good fit for Michael Duff, and I rate Duff incredibly highly. I've sort of studied his work over the last 5 years or so in the lower leagues, and he's consistently outdone himself, massively exceeding expectations. Took over Cheltenham from a difficult position, got them to their first ever Football League title and highest ever finish after that. And then he took over Barnsley when you remember the 21-22 Barnsley side that were just absolutely hopeless. He took charge of them, changed the culture, introduced a clear style of play, and got them into the playoffs in League One with about 85 points. So I think Michael Duff is an incredibly good manager. He's well overdue a shot at the Championship. And that's kind of a big part of why I'm putting Swansea in the top 6. I'm not necessarily convinced that it's a top 6 squad as things stand. I think it's going to be important that they do well in the transfer window. It might have to be the loan market. But I think if they can find the right additions and keep hold of Matt Grimes, who I think has a hugely influential role to play as the conductor at the base of midfield, I think Duff could really inspire them to big things.
Yeah, keeping hold of Pirro is going to be big as well. He's been linked with Leicester throughout the summer. But yeah, you positive about Swansea, Seb?
I've got them in Yeah, I've got them in mid-table. I haven't got them in the playoffs. I've got them in mid-table. My only kind of thing would be, is Duff going to be able to transition a heavy possession-based side for the last couple of years to his high-pressing style that we know he absolutely loves in the space of one window? And if what's he called, Joel Pirro, if he moves on, is Poirot, yeah, with the massive moustache, is Jerry Yates going to be able to score the goals to replace him? I'm not entirely sure, but I think it'll be a season of transition for them with a look to really, really push on next year.
Yeah, I'm along those lines as well. I noticed that we're ticking over an hour, so I'm going to do some efficiency here, guys, purely because Watford and West Brom, Gab, there's so much similarities here. Two parachute teams, hugely dysfunctional and underachieving seasons last time out. Managerial question marks, I think. I like Ismail at Watford on paper, but Watford just very short-termist. West Brom, a little bit of recruitment, but not a huge amount of excitement for their fan base. Is it going to be another season of struggle for these two?
Yeah, I think I've got both in my bottom half for similar reasons, I suppose. And I think you're right to kind of put them in the same bracket. I think Watford, I feel like Valerian Ismail is going to need time to introduce his extreme high pressing direct style of play, but I almost feel ridiculous saying that because it is Watford and Watford managers just don't get that time. And so I've got massive concerns over whether he's going to have the personnel to be able to play the way he wants. As for West Brom, I rate Carlos Corberán incredibly highly. I think he's one of the best managers in the league, but I think you kind of mitigate that against West Brom being one of the worst run club in the league, because it's been mistake after mistake since Lai Gushong took over, I think in 2017. So a lot of concerns for West Bromwich Albion on a structural, for both of these clubs on a structural level, and that's why I see them underwhelming.
Spoiler alert for Seb's predictions. I'm
starting to regret this, having heard Gab add reasoning and logic to the debate. Yeah, I've tipped Watford for 6 simply because, as you mentioned, their short-termism does normally see them over the line. Reece Healy, I don't think, is going to be the answer to scoring many, many goals unless they reinvest that João Pedro money sensibly. But I do like Ismail, so I have tipped them for 6. But having heard Gab just now, I'll be honest, if this was 24 hours later, I think I'd be revising my my prediction. And West Brom, I think, again, really like Corbahal. I've not got them in the playoffs. I've got them, I think, 8th or something. We'll come on to the positions in a minute. But yeah, I mean, they've not signed anybody. O'Shea has gone to Burnley. Grant's gone out. And I guess the big question mark with West Brom is, are they going to be the first side to get a points deduction this season, given their off-field escapade? So if Corbahal wasn't in charge there, I'd have them much further down the league. Yeah,
big pressure on Thomas Asante as well to score the goals there, isn't there? Interesting. I've got them 10th and 11th, but you could swap them around. So we will get to our 1 to 11s very briefly, but we did tease it at the start or near the start. Gab, we've talked about Ipswich on this podcast every week. Here's your opportunity to make some more friends or to upset a few people. Which way are you going to go?
Well, it depends on how you interpret me saying Ipswich are finishing 8th. I suspect most Ipswich fans would take that as a progressive season, even if I think in some quarters there probably is a bit of optimism that Ipswich might be able to take the league by storm. I certainly think you've got potentially one of the best managers in the league in Kieran McKenna. As we've all spoken about, I rate him incredibly highly. And I think that you've got that stability in terms of the core of players that you've kept hold of going into this season, and the recruitment in January was so strong, and I think that gives you a much better chance going into the Championship of really making a difference. And I think McKenna's shown that ability to not only implement those progressive ideas but also show that adaptability at times. So really impressed with him. I think you're on for a good season.
There you go. Let's continue the thought, Seb, with here's our 1 to 24 picks, and hopefully people can read that. All three of us unanimously saying 9th. What's your thoughts on us, Seb?
I think we still need a bit of work. I think we need a centre-back, as we discussed earlier, but I think McKenna is the reason that I think we're all going into the season with such optimism, as well as our smart kind of recruitment. And I think there'd be an understanding as well that, let's say things didn't go amazingly and we get to the January and we're in 15th, 16th, 17th, I think they would go out and make further additions, because we know the ambition of the board, the ownership group, Mark Ashton. We know that we're not looking to simply compete and hang in around the bottom echelons of the Championship. We're looking to really push on, and if we want to keep McKenna, that's what we're going to have to do. I think a season of 9th, like we've all happened coincidentally, have gone for the same league position. I think a season of 9th and some decent additions will kind of maybe look to satisfy him. He's not going to want to come up and hang around the lower bottom. He's an incredibly ambitious guy. We know that. He's come from a Champions League coaching club at Man United, and he's going to want to get back to the Premier League as soon as possible. I think we'll be in contention for the playoffs up until about March time, and then naturally I think it will drop off a little bit. But I think we're all incredibly excited to see what he can do. But we do still need those couple of additions, I would say.
Do you want to talk us through the other key positions here, Seb, for you? Your top two, your playoffs and your relegation sides, and anything else you want to highlight?
Yeah, so Leicester, Middlesbrough, Southampton and Sunderland, I'm pretty confident on being the top four. And I guess what we've heard from Gab has really backed that up. Coventry, Watford, West Brom, I'm starting to think now maybe I've made a bit of an error there. Coventry, if they keep Harmer, I think they'll be kind of there or thereabouts. Watford are the one now, looking back at it, I'd probably look to swap them out if I could, maybe for somebody like a Blackburn, or maybe just push Leeds up a further spot in the table. Leeds are the ones I think might just miss out, because traditionally a parachute side does nearly always mess it up. And I'm going for Leeds, given the delays in appointing Farker and the lack of a goal scorer if Pamford gets injured.
And your bottom three?
Yeah, as I said when we did the club by clubs, QPR, I just think Ainsworth's record was so bad and they've not recruited to suit his style. Cardiff is a complete unknown with the managerial appointment and some issues kind of off the field. And Rotherham kind of, they're traditionally normally always down there. Who's going to score the goals? They've brought in a bit of experience, but I think they'll go down on account that Plymouth and Sheffield Wednesday and Stoke and the ones just above them might just do enough to get over the line.
Gab, at this point, you can plug is it a blog that will go out?
Yeah, so as we record it tomorrow morning, by this point, by the time this goes out, it'll have been Monday morning, 8 a.m. It's out, Championship season preview on BetVictor 1-24. You can follow me on Twitter at Gab Sutton, and that I'll probably highlight those tweets so you can go and find the links that are relevant. I'm also covering League One and League Two. I'm currently in the process of finishing off my writing on League Two, which has been fun. So yeah, really looking forward to seeing people's reactions to it, and as always, that's going to be quite lively, I imagine.
Where's Cole U? Just quickly, that's Wednesday, isn't it? I'll ask you separately on Cole U. Don't worry. Okay, I just want to tell my brother-in-law. It'd be interesting to see how they get on. Talk to us about your kind of key positions there. Again, Leicester, Sunderland. You've given us some of these already.
Sure.
Swansea, Hull, probably the picks that maybe surprise a few, and then your bottom three.
Yeah, I think Swansea and Hull are going to be the dark horses, the ones that might not necessarily be everyone's fancy on paper, but I think Hull are a really well-run club that are on their way up. And with Swansea, I'm putting a lot of my eggs into the Duff basket. I think, Leicester, I think, are very much the clear standout squad in the Championship on paper. Sunderland, I think, are going to have a big season as well. And I think Middlesbrough and Leeds will be comfortable playoffs and possibly pushing autos. But I'm expecting a tough season for the Yorkshire trio of Sheffield Wednesday, Huddersfield and Rotherham. Rotherham, because I think they're going to rely, because Victor Johansson might not be able to produce the same numbers he did last year. Huddersfield, I'm not sure Warnock's going to cut it at 74, and Sheffield Wednesday, I don't trust them as a structure, and that's why I've got those three going down.
Fair enough. I'll bring out some conclusions from my picks, and Dave Diamond of the Blue Monday team also provided his as well, and he's agreeing with you on Swansea, by the way. Also agrees with me that Norwich will finish maybe higher than we think, and I've got Norwich finishing above us. Controversy. I'm tempting fate.
Sack Woodward.
If I do, because I like being wrong. So prove me wrong, Norwich and Ipswich. But I've got a 9th, as we said. But yeah, I like Borough under Carrick. I think Leeds under Farker, if they get some bodies in the building to borrow a Seb Brownism, I think they should be all right and have momentum about them. Coventry, I also think Sims for Gyökeres. There's a lot of question marks about it, but I think the style of play, they're generally a like-for-like replacement. I know Gyökeres got quite a few assists as well, but I think Coventry might recruit well, and I think that continuity of Mark Robbins is helpful there. Similar story to you guys. I'm thinking more positively about QPR, having heard about your thoughts, Gab. But But I think Sheffield Wednesday could really be in trouble as well. But Huddersfield and Rotherham seem easy picks for the bottom two. Look at Dave's bottom three, though. The two promoted teams along with Ipswich going down. Hello to our Plymouth friends.
The Plymouth fans, direct all your ire to David Diamond, not us,
David
please.
Diamond of the Pods
Give
team.
him a Twitter at.
Yeah.
Yes. No, we're not going to drop Dave under it. But yeah, I think overall, I don't know about you guys. It does feel like maybe the division's going to have there's like a two-tier championship, I think, next season. That was my feeling. And as you said, Seb, kind of slotting people in, it did feel kind of a lot of the teams are a much of a muchness in those halves. And well, we're doing this early doors, as we mentioned, so don't read too much into this yet. We know that there's still some July and August signings to go.
We should do it again on September the 1st and then compare the two.
We didn't do it last year. We'll come back in
the window activity
midway through the season and compare. I've got the league table based on our average ratings.
Interesting.
Leicester Borough, Leeds, Southampton, Sunderland, but Ipswich scrape in there. Courtesy, I think, of our uncertainty around the chasing pack, I think, guys.
It's interesting. I think the fact that Ipswich are in there shows that we've got lots of contrasting views on some of the other teams, because I'm quite big on Hull and Swansea, but I think only Dave's got Swansea in the playoffs. You two are less convinced on that.
I mean, Coventry there.
Yeah. I've not got Coventry in mind. I think for me, between 5th and 11th, I feel like I could have swapped them from any order. So I've got Coventry 11th. I feel like on another day I could have easily put them into the playoffs. Yeah, and I could have easily put Swansea 11th. So I think that it's going to be so exciting, isn't it? It's because it's just so unpredictable, and it's going to be wonderful as always.
It's great to be back there, isn't it, Seb? It's it's that feeling you get on day one, isn't it? And we'll talk about it on the pre-match show. You won't, because you're on holiday, disloyal.
Where are you going, Seb?
I'm off to Florida in about 15 hours
you'll be
time.
In the air, won't you, at this point?
I've landed at this point tomorrow, so I should have dialed in, shouldn't I? But no, yeah, I'm away. As I said before you came on, Gab, I'm my holidays are dictated by school holidays, so I traditionally always have to miss the first game of the season. It happened last year. I missed the first game of the season in order to get a holiday. So Woodward is not impressed. So.
No. It's the same every year, guys. Always the start of August. But Seb, I know you won't be feeling it as all of us might be. Well, I know you'll still be feeling it, I'm sure.
No, yeah.
Sunderland
I'm
game,
much more excited about the start of the season than the holiday.
Sunday, the 6th, I think it is, of August.
Yep.
Anything could be possible, couldn't it? And that's the great thing.
Exactly, and it feels a very different championship to the one we so pitifully exited 5 years ago, 4 years ago, whenever it was. We're now coming back. We're no longer kind of looking, thinking, we might get, if Emir Hughes stays fit, we might finish 16th or so. We're a completely different proposition now. It's a league that fills me with excitement. There are some big old teams now at this level. We're one of them, and I'm really excited to see what we can do this season and how we can look to push on. If you look at the game changer era, I think we'll look back and say, okay, well, getting out of League One was the first tick, and now we really see how serious these guys are.
If you want to join in with the 1 to 24 picks, please join the Blue Monday Telegram group. We've got a competition running there. We'll obviously lodge our predictions, though we might allow ourselves to change them a little bit. I think we might cut that off just before the first game of the season, I think. Give ourselves a little bit of wriggle room. But yeah, Blue Monday Telegram, one of the many things going on there. We've also got an exclusive interview with ITFC's Jacob Henderson as well, exclusive Q&A with him, giving some insights behind the scenes from the media team. So head over to Telegram, our website, bluemonday.itfc.co.uk. All the details to sign up there, 2-week free trial, and then a subscription thereafter. Merch also linked there, and plenty more content to come as well. We'll probably do something after the Luton game midweek, but our drumbeat, our normal cadence of podcast starts week after next. We'll do some stuff around Sunderland. Then we've got the pre-match show and the flagship will be back. And if I get it right, guys, the Sunderland flagship show, the show that Gab we do after the game, looking back, will be our 700th podcast episode. So
well done.
There you go. So yeah, Blue Monday ITFC.co.uk for the website, everything linked there, at Blue Monday ITFC on Twitter and everywhere else. Get involved. It's an exciting time. Gab, remind us where we can find you and all the cool stuff that you've got going on.
Yeah, so you can follow me on Twitter at Gab Sutton. I have, during the weekdays, I have daily sort of conversation starters on all EFL matters, so you can get involved with sort of responding with your perspective on those questions on your EFL team. So that's always a lot of fun, hopefully. I also have a show called EFL Debate where I talk to you guys, to fans of different clubs, and sometimes able to get the odd player or manager on as well. So that's good fun. And I've also got, as I mentioned earlier, those 1 to 24 season previews, which are out. Championship on Monday, so probably already out. League One on Tuesday and League Two on Wednesday. So you can go and check those out by following me on Twitter or at Gab Sutton, and you can also follow the hashtag EFL Debate.
Quality stuff. EFL Debate show, Seb, the Ipswich edition. Talk to me about the stats for that one.
Yeah, flying, aren't we? Yeah, some really decent numbers. So, yeah, really happy and really proud of that one.
We've got double the views of the second most watched video on your channel, Gab.
Wow.
The Ipswich EFL
And how many more thousand was it ahead of the Norwich one?
We had they had 1.7,
wasn't it, or something?
when we had 4.1k.
Yeah.
These are the metrics that matter, Gab. Who cares about the 124? It's about the views on your channel for Ipswich versus Norwich content. So we are flying the flag that way. Go and give Gab a follow. Always interesting, always insightful, always got something exciting happening, and covers a great, vast EFL pyramid as well. So, Gab, we appreciate you. Thank you so much for joining us and giving us a sneak peek to your 124 Championship picks. Go and check that out on his Twitter account. And we might, dare I say, come back during the season and give it a look as well. Gab, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for listening as well. Do give us your thoughts in the comments as well. If you've got any views on your 1 to 24s and where Ipswich might be, do head over to Telegram to join in the debate as well. Give us a like, a subscribe. Seb, safe traveling, have fun, and we'll see you all soon. Thanks, everyone.